Hey, Kids Cook Real Food, Katie Kimball here for the Healthy Parenting Connector, where we connect parents who so strongly desire to raise healthy kids with the experts who have the information they need. And today we are digging into a topic that I know is a serious pain point for anyone with a human being in their house, and that's screens. That's the use of technology. And I've got Zach Renner here with me today. He is what Devorah Heitner would call a digital native, meaning he grew up with technology, but he's really kind of tackled his use of it and created a lot of good habits, and even started sort of a business or a foundation to help others make sure we continue to humanize our use of technology. So thank you for being here, Zach.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'll just read a little bit about you so people know who you are. I actually met Zach when we were at a training to become stress mastery educators. So stress mastery is something that I got into because I completely stink at dealing with my own stress. And I have a feeling Zach is kind of the other end. Like, I think he's actually pretty good at managing his own life and just wants to be able to explain it to others. Am I right about that, Zach?
Yeah, you're pretty right about that.
Yeah, I think Zach and I have pretty different personalities, but I have 4 kids eating my brain cells, and you don't have any yet, right, Zach?
No, not
Okay.
yet. That's a fair point.
So parents, why are we going to listen to tech advice from someone who's not even a parent? Because he's been there and he's done that, and he does have a lot of good ideas. Zach is an elite mind-body mastery coach. He's the founder of Awakened Athlete LLC, and what he did is he combined his background as a record-holding collegiate athlete and CrossFit Level 1 trainer with the latest research in applied integrative neuroscience, performance-focused somatic therapy, and energy psychology. Got all that? Smashed it all together to develop the most comprehensive and holistic transformation framework on the market today. So basically, he helps people become the best version of themselves. For about a decade, his services have only been available to tech companies and financial institutions like IBM, Goldman Sachs, Bridgewater Associates, First Republic Bank. But now he's opened up to working with individuals and their families, focusing specifically on current and former athletes at all levels. Now, the reason Zach is here today is because he co-founded huBhu, Humans Being Human, in 2015. It's a collaboration with Harvard-trained psychiatrist and brain researcher, Dr. Srini Pillay, and CEO coaching expert, Darren Shepard. Now, huBhu is devoted to, check this out, furthering authentic human connection through technology. So we are not here today to say all tech is bad, throw away your screens, don't let your kids ever touch one, because that is not realistic. But how can we use technology to fuel human connection and humans becoming the better versions of themselves? That's what we're going to dig into today. And practically, as parents, how do we deal with screens in our homes? Okay, so thanks for being here, Zach.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Awesome. So I mentioned one of my new favorite books, Screenwise by Devorah Heitner, and her term is a digital native. So you are a digital native. You've grown up with technology, but I feel like you've had kind of a journey in how you have used it. From what I know of you so far, Zach, what has that process been for you? Like, how did you embrace tech in middle or high school, and what began to shift in college and adulthood?
Yeah, so it was very similar to a lot of growth processes where you start off being totally unaware and sort of mindlessly engaging in something, and then somehow along the way you cultivate a level of awareness and then start engaging with it in a healthier way. And what I'm finding is that I'm also in a unique spot where I had part of my childhood, and really the part where your parents have the most influence on you. I had that without technology, and then I sort of, during my opportunities to grow into independence, started using technology. So I was in a unique situation to really see the impact that independence specifically, and how you teach your kids how to be independent, has on their relationship with technology, both as children under your roof, and then moving forward on into adulthoods and out into the real world.
Okay, so we were talking before we started recording that Zach got a flip phone in 8th grade and then started Facebook as a freshman. And that's kind of, the technology life merger, I think he called it. So, but that is interesting that you didn't have as much. You were kind of right on the edge. When you were 2, you didn't have a smartphone in your hand.
Right.
Yeah. So what did that do for you? You talked about gaining awareness. what did that awareness do inside your head to cause any sort of change in your relationship with technology?
Yeah, so the awareness really becomes that, you're so used to sort of choosing to do something and watching what you choose to do impact something about your external environment. And it's sort of like this I influence the world kind of mentality. With technology, it's interesting because everything is moving at such a high rate of speed, and there's so much subliminal and unconscious information that's coming at you without you even being aware of it. The relationship and the dichotomy between your external and internal world begins to shift, where the external world begins to influence you without you knowing it, and it then begins to change how you interact with the external world. So if you can imagine sort of this circle that's occurring where, prior to technology, the feedback going in and out is largely the same, and it's pretty much uninterrupted. When you put technology in that loop, right when it hits this point, it changes, and what's coming back is something very different than what's going out. And what's coming in begins to shift this internal world. And if you're not aware of that change, you sort of just begin putting out outputs, interactions, actions, thoughts that aren't truly connected with you anymore, but are really beginning to become reactions of what you're ingesting. So it's very interesting, and the awareness of that impact of that feedback loop and where it sort of gets interrupted allows you to cultivate other habits, practices, and processes to be able to reintegrate it properly before it comes back out.
Okay, so we don't want to mindlessly interact with technology. I think that was a lot to digest, but I love it. Very academic. I think what I'm hearing you saying is that when we give something to the world, when we speak or we do an action, it's inherently human. And then we're constantly getting back things that are inherently tech, computer, screen, and they're different. It's like a different language, and we accidentally, automatically start speaking maybe the language of technology or feeling in the language of technology. Do you feel that this is dehumanizing when we're interacting with screens so often?
That's a great point. And I just, the importance of what you said is critical, because before technology, that feedback loop is only between humans. So it's always humanizing. When you integrate machines, or largely that's what technology is, you have a whole totally different language. And if you're still interacting with it as you would a human being, and you're not aware that this is a totally different medium, you're in danger of a lot of different things. So to what you said, to your point, sorry, can you repeat your question again? I wanted to make sure that I was really, I like how you explained that.
Thank you. That's why I'm a teacher. It's what I do.
Yeah, right.
Just give back. So, I mean, humans being human is such an interesting name for this company that's focused kind of around our interaction with tech. Do you feel like technology is dehumanizing? Are there ways in which it can be humanizing?
So that's the beautiful part about. Sorry, my Siri just got inspired and started playing music, and I was like, what was that?
Wait, you mean you have your phone in your office while you're working? What?
Right. Hey, my office is quite wide, so there's all sorts of stuff in my office. So to your to the question, it's not humanizing only when we treat it as though it is just like a human being, or just like not a human being. As soon as you go black and white, it's dehumanizing, because as human beings, we operate on a spectrum. There is no black and white. Everything is sort of merged together, and people who try and just say it's this or that, like that's really what's dehumanizing. So when you say technology is technology, and that's just it, and humans are just humans, and there's no way for this relationship to ever become symbiotic in any way, and technology takes away from this and takes away from that. When you start demonizing technology, it becomes dehumanizing. So in looking at technology or machines as another being, like as another thing in the world in which we have now the opportunity to learn from and interact with, and help enhance the relationships we have with it, But at the same time, the relationships technology has with each other, because largely, you know, technology is beginning to interact between itself and not so much with human beings anymore. So it's like, as you begin to look at it in more terms as a being, and can cultivate that level of acceptance and open-mindedness in yourself, it becomes humanizing. It's a reminder of what it means to be human.
Okay, very, very challenging and interesting. I mean, I think one thing I liked about what you said when we were together for stress mastery training was that, you know, we can't completely demonize screens and technology. Number one, because they're part of our lives, but number two, because they can be helpful if we can be wise and use them in the right way, see them through the right lens, right? That they're not humans, but we need to remain human. And how can we use technology for good? So let's get a little practical here, if that's okay with you, Zach. What would you recommend to parents on that big, kind of the first big decision is, when do you get your child their own device? And I'd say that's two parts: their own device and then their own, you know, actual smartphone where the internet's in your pocket all the time.
You know, there's no set age that I think that you can really prescribe, or grade level, or whatever it may be. The key factor for me and a parent in determining whether or not their child is ready to engage with technology and social media and smartphones is their comprehension of intention. So it is, do they understand what intention is, what it means, even if at a basic level? Like, when and not necessarily, you don't have to understand why you're doing something, because that sort of gets into maybe a deeper level of detail they're not ready for, but to understand that what you choose to do and why you choose to do it, not why it's happening, but why you're choosing to do it, dictates the outcomes at every level beyond what you're currently aware of. So as soon as they can comprehend that, you know, if you're giving someone a hug because you want to show them love, like, that's good. If you give someone a hug because you want to squeeze the air out of them, that's not good. So you know, it's, once they can understand, like, the reason why we do the different things, or seemingly similar, two of the same things can have two different outcomes because of what you put into it. When they can understand that at a basic level, you can engage with technology in a healthy way, because that is the fundamental principle in how you can engage with technology in a humanizing way and rehumanize through technology. Because intention is inherently human being.
Love that. Comprehension of intention. I think that's a phrase parents can really, you know, try to memorize and use. So we want to be asking our kids, why do you think this person wrote this article that everyone's clicking on? Why do you think this person posted this picture on Instagram? You know, why do you think this person shared this on Facebook, even though it might have hurt someone? Do you think they meant to hurt someone, or was it just an accident because they had another intention? And that's absolutely mature thinking. To be able to think through someone else's perspective is definitely, you know, way beyond, you know, age 5 or 7. And again, we don't want to put ages on that, because there are plenty of 16, 17-year-olds who have no idea how to take the perspective of another. So as parents, we want to always be asking those questions to get our kids out of their own heads and into someone else's ideas, right? Help them walk a mile in someone else's shoes.
The situation that comes to mind is like the whole timeout concept. You know, if by just putting a child into timeout because they did something wrong and leaving it at that, you're not helping foster any kind of understanding of why it happened, or connection to their actions, the outcome, their intention, and why, and understanding, or allowing them to articulate why they did something, and then have you ingest that and help understand and deepening that. So a very simple way to do that is, you know, if the child does do something wrong and you're going to put them in timeout, they don't come out until they understand why they're in there. Like, okay, like, hey, like, there's no timer set. Like, you're just in timeout until you can tell me, like, why you did what you did and why you think why you're now in timeout. And I want to also just be careful with the term mature, because I think a lot of people they get caught up in being like, these concepts are too deep for kids. They're too, like, they don't understand it. And like, you know, this is how I feel about kids menus at restaurants. It's the same thing I feel about this. It's like, why are we feeding our kids the less nutrient crap and we're eating the good stuff? Like, do we not think that they're like capable of digesting, you know, nutrient dense information like we are? Like, they may not be able to respond or interact with it in the same way we can, but it doesn't mean that that's not sinking in, and seeds are being planted and then blooming at certain points in their life.
That is so true. And I tell parents that all the time, like, raise your expectations on your kids' palates, raise your expectations on what they can do, what they can feel. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of ways to take really complex thought processes and bring them down to a kid's level without turning them into a kid's menu. I love that analogy, you know, and there's so many ways to be a good parent. There's so many systems for discipline, but I do think if there's discipline without conversation, it's just punitive, and it's probably not going to work that well. And it's definitely not going to build kids' brains and build kids' empathy and build kids' ability to, like you said, comprehend the intention behind things, which is very key to interacting with tech. Now, Zach, you've been pretty successful as a young person, and I think that's another reason why parents are hopefully willing to kind of listen to you and take some advice. You were a collegiate athlete, and that takes a lot of self-discipline. You've started, I think, a couple businesses. I've lost track along the way already, and you're not even 30 yet. So do you feel like tech helped or hindered your successes in athleticism and business?
It definitely helped me because, you know, around this concept of intention and humanization, and what does it mean to be human versus a machine versus anything else. Like, it helped challenge a lot of those preconceptions, and it helped really dive into what those things mean to me and what it means to the world and to different people, and how technology can be used for good. You know, one of the things that comes to mind is sort of, you know, when I started really diving into technology and looking at it as a means of enhancing my performance, as both mentally and physically, I started to come across, you know, sort of two different paths that or opinions that people shared about technology and its future and how it integrates with human beings. One is sort of your classic, you know, Elon Musk Terminator view, where machines wind up becoming sentient and then they kill all the human beings. And I was like, oh, that seems like pretty like scare tactic. Like, I don't really buy that. Like, that doesn't feel true to me. So then looking at, you know, sort of there's this alternative path, which is this symbiotic relationship between human beings and technology that elevates the water and raises all the boats for everyone. That you know, really began to define how I viewed a lot of things in life, not just technology. It was like, what's the most radical form of collaboration that we can have as a human race, regardless of age, gender, regardless of location, education? Like, what is that, and how does technology play a role in that? So for me, it was a very enhancing and empowering journey, and I don't think it hindered me at all.
Nice. But I like the fact that in your story you had an awareness too of like how interaction with technology could impact you, because I do think that sometimes tech can really drag us down. Sometimes tech can dehumanize us, it can depress us, it can addict us. And you know, these are very scary things for parents to think about with their kids. What would you say to parents about that? Like, what are some phrases to use, or how do we help our kids figure out the good side of tech versus kind of the downhill slide that sometimes tech can pull us down?
You know, it really comes down to, and I keep coming back to, like, independence, but a better way to, like, my initial reaction in thinking about this is about creating containers in your home or time with your children that's away from tech, but everyone's aware of that. And I actually think that there is a step further that is required to truly engage in technology and really, you know, everything else in life. And it's an ability to be alone with yourself, because, even let's say at dinner, we're saying no technology and we're going to connect as, as people, as family, and we'll talk. You're not always going to be there. You're not always going to be with your kid. And when you're not there, technology is there. And unless you help your child create a comfort with that alone time with themselves and help cultivate that relationship, there is never, that's a battle. Like, that child will always lose. Technology will always win. If it's, I'm going to spend some alone time with me versus I'm going to play some games, like, that's always going to win. So if you can begin to empower and increase the value, which, by the way, is infinite, the value of being able to be alone with yourself and have access to the connection that provides to other people and other human beings, as well as your own intuition, wisdom, feelings, like, that is huge. Like, that is, like, if you're talking about superhuman powers in this day and age, the ability to be alone with yourself and garner insights and wisdom is bar none the top superpower.
Oh my gosh. And mark it down. This is the best answer so far, because that's so true. And they say creativity is declining too, because we're not spending enough time in our own heads. What happens even among adults if somebody goes to the bathroom and two people are having lunch, one goes to the bathroom, it's like boom, immediately on the phone. Like, you have 30 seconds, you go to your phone.
Yeah, and this has nothing to do with introverts or extroverts. This has nothing to do with age, employment. Like, it has nothing to do with any of this. It has everything to do with connection. We assume that technology can enhance our connection. It can enhance the human connection, the human race. It can enhance all those things. But if we neglect the inherent connection that exists inside of us and only begin looking at the external, that's when all of the negative aspects begin to come and show their faces, and we have no way of managing them because we've lost that connection with ourselves. So, instead of, you can still have those containers in that space with your child, but there's no technology, but your intention should be, how do we cultivate a more intrinsic or internal? How do I develop their interiority in this moment? It's like, hey, like, have that conversation, but then, like, well, how does that make you feel, or where do you feel that? Where do you sense that? Like, what makes you so? Always helping them know that there is always a switch that can be made to go inward, and not to be scared of the darkness, just meaning the fact that there's no map for what's going on in here. There's no directions or anything. This is the frontier. And instead of, I notice a lot of people are shy away from that because they're like, man, I don't know what's going on in there. Like, I'm afraid, like, da-da-da. And it's like, no, like, you're only afraid because this inferior information processor, in comparison to your intuition and unconscious, just sees this huge packet of information, is like, dude, I can't download that. Like, no, we're scared, we're afraid. And you're like, but this is a lot of good in here. And it's like, I don't care, I can't handle it. Like, okay,
yeah.
Like, we're gonna shut this off for a while, get the distraction of technology away, and just, like, sit in this space and see what pops up.
Yeah. So in other words, very practically, let's foster a little boredom in our kids. And really, it's all about building habits. When you said that, like, the thing about being alone, I thought that's totally true, because if we have a habit of, okay, what do we do with our lives? Well, we either talk with people or we're on a screen, and that's all you've ever done, or you're being productive, right? I say that a lot in my family. I'll be like, you're standing still. You need to find something to do. I do. I'm like, what can you do that's productive? You have 4 minutes before the bus comes. Like, put away 3 toys or whatever.
It's an assumption that productivity is doing. I have to do.
Yeah.
Where in reality, you can be productive and be still.
Yes. So we've got to create, various habits, various options, so that when our children, whether they're children or adults at that point, have a moment, that they don't immediately think, oh, are there people? I can talk to them. Oh, is there a screen? I can interact with it. You can think, oh, I can think inside my own head, and I'm comfortable with this. This is an option for me. It's a habit. So maybe we don't want to turn on our screens, the little DVD player, every time we're in our minivan for a 6-minute drive. Right? I see that a lot. People are just going to school and there's a show on, and I'm not judging, but I'm judging. I'm like, people don't need that every moment of every day, right? You're right. We've got to be able to sit with ourselves. And I like that you mentioned even just to talk about it. How does that feel? Are you okay with that? Because we need to build that skill, just like we build the skill of reading and the skill of writing, we build up the muscle of thinking.
And one of the things you mentioned is, I love that you mentioned it, for one, because I agree with it so much, and two, because it's quite literally the focus of Awakened Athlete, and it is the combination of habits and distractions. And how do you transform habits so that they're no longer bad or toxic, but empowering? And how do you defend and protect yourself against distractions that pull you away from the healthy habits you're creating? So those two things, hand in hand, for me and my experience, are the keys to transformation. It is the habits, and it is your ability to handle distractions, especially this modern day and age. Because I don't think distractions necessarily would have been so critical prior to this information dense time we live in. But now, this is fundamental. Your ability to protect both consciously and unconsciously against distractions through habits, because habits are things that run in your unconscious, but that are cultivated consciously. When you have those two things, you have created the most robust and automatic enhancement system for you to move through life. Like, it is the ultimate growth mindset. It's no longer a growth mindset, but a growth operating system from head to toe. And you can navigate through life trusting in the automated habits, trusting in what pops up, and knowing that you're protected against information. Because even right now, as we're talking, we're being bombarded with an infinite number of information from not just ourselves, but from our environment, whether we see it, feel it, or aware of it or not. But that's impacting us. And if we don't have the unconscious habits to take all of that information and process it in a useful way without us having to sit down and be aware of it, man, it's an uphill battle, to say the least.
Yeah, life is so full of distractions. And I feel like part of being a parent is building habits. Okay, we're getting out of the car, look around. What did you have with you when you got into the car? I say it all the time. My kids still aren't getting it. I'll keep trying. Like, we teach kids how to cook. And so it needs to be a habit to carry the knife this way and not, straight forward. Just in it. So building those habits in our kids, but habits of mind, habits of character, so important. Let's jump over to talking about awakening your inner athlete. I've got kind of two more tech subjects just as a teaser for the listeners, but you have a really interesting perspective about what even an inner athlete is. What does that mean? How does this kind of apply to our relationship with technology?
Absolutely. So the inner athlete is the part in all of us, whether we're aware of it or not, that allows us to take our habits and our energy and our knowledge and our skills and capabilities in a certain area of our life, and then apply it in unique and creative ways across all other areas of our life. So, and the reason why I say the inner athlete is because, when I was working on a certain skill for football, that was my sport, right there. One of the other things I did all benefited from a lot of the things that I was doing, both in the gym or on the field, whether that was me working on my stride or working on my hip mobility. Like, that allowed me to do all of these other things in other areas of my life. So if you take that concept, the ability to work in some way somewhere and then apply it elsewhere, you look at that and take it now inside. So now imagine the emotions I feel, the thoughts I think, the habits I build in either athletics or academia, and learning how to take all of that and apply it now to self-advocacy, to presentation skills, to growth mindsets, to a future career, to studying habits, to relationships, to communication, whatever it may be. Learning that, one, that's a possibility, and then how to go about cultivating that is what the inner athlete is all about. So everyone has that skill, but not everyone awakens it in their lifetime. So I'm setting out to help both students, children, athletes, current athletes, parents, whoever it may be, to awaken their inner athlete.
Okay. Which doesn't necessarily mean exercise or sports. It's more of a mindset habit thing.
Yeah. And it's more of it's sort of like the dichotomy between the mind and body. So it's the representation that as an athlete, I can do things with my mind that impact my body and vice versa. So it's no different. Like, our body is the vessel with which we interact in the world. And if we don't have a great connection between that and our internal world, then we're in for a world of hurt in a variety of ways. So if we can awaken our inner athlete and know that that space and that connection is at the pinnacle of its game, then, we can really accomplish a lot.
Yeah, super interesting to think about.
Not just physically, but in our future careers and our families, as independent, functioning, and successful members of society.
Which that's like totally what we talk about here at the Healthy Parenting Connector, like independent, I don't know about functioning. Usually we like to say successful, kind, generous, giving members of society. But yeah, absolutely. Like, we have to, as parents, think about the end game and like, what kind of adults do we want to raise? Oh, just a second. I just got a notification. No, I'm kidding. What do you talk about when you talk about social media? Because if there's anything that I think, at least in my own life and my own brain and my own phone buzzing at me from my desk, that's more addictive than anything else, than maybe chocolate, it's social media. Because there's always one more scroll. Like, it literally never ends. It's like, oh, maybe I'll just go for like one more like happy thought. Like, oh, maybe just one more. Like, it can be awful. Do you have any strategies that may apply also to adults, cough, cough, as well as our preteens and teens?
Yeah. So really what it comes down to is we need to utilize our humanness in order to balance out our interaction with social media, because social media provides a type of artificial humanness, which is the idea of connection and social connection. So, one of the things that we need to be able to do is sort of, when we identify that we are scrolling, or when we decide we are going to go and engage with social media, or, every time we are aware that we're doing it and we say, oh, why am I doing this? Or anytime there's that spark of awareness, we need to connect it with something human so that our body is able to receive that instead of that artificial piece. So it can make the comparison between that nutrient dense humanness and sort of the more processed social media artificial humanness. So one very simple way to do that, and this is why I love breath work, because breath work is breathing controls your heart and your heart controls your brain. So the more you can utilize your breath, the more you can impact your brain in a positive way. So a very simple habit is even before you engage. So it all depends on when you become aware of it. If I'm about to go on Facebook and I'm aware of what is going to happen, take a breath of gratitude for that awareness. One breath. That's it. Just a breath of gratitude. Just say, wow, I'm really thankful that I have the ability to be aware that I'm making this choice and this is happening, in just one breath. And let's say that awareness isn't there and you're on it and you're scrolling and you go, then you're like, what am I doing? In that moment, breath of gratitude for your awareness. And the whole time you're giving your body really what it truly wants, which is connection, which is an acknowledgement of love and humanness and just acceptance. And it just wants to know it's appreciated. It wants attention. It wants that from you, that internal part of you. That's why as you're going through it, that's what it's seeking. It wants that feeling. And you're like, oh, wait, oh, that's right. Like, I'm good for now. Cool. Awesome. Thank you for that awareness. So every time that happens, no matter where it happens, just a single breath of gratitude for it lets your body know that you appreciate it in and of itself more than you do what's on the screen. And over time, as you do that, you realize that one, you don't need the scroll as much, and you don't need the social media as much, but instead you are engaging it more and more frequently from that place of awareness and intention that we talked about.
Yes. So you can tell you're not addicted because you scrolled the wrong way. That's not even how you scroll on social media,
I'm like,
Zach, dude.
I'm scrolling this way and that way.
You're going backward, like down the feed. I don't know what you're doing.
Scrolling in
So I would
circles.
say, yes, step one, raise your own awareness, right? So just a little self-talk. Figure out when you're feeling that addiction, right? Because and call it as it is. Step two, take a breath. And I would say step three, think of a habit. The research says people like their own ideas better than anyone else's. Go figure. So if we can think of our own kind of habit breaking technique, whether it's look up, maybe it's as simple as just look up, look around. Maybe it's as simple as find a real person. Walk into another room, find a real person. Whatever, I don't see, those are my ideas. You probably won't like them. But there's got to be something where we can make a habit that once we feel ourselves in the scroll mode and the kind of like time suck mode, because we kind of know what's happening and we go, oh, whatever, like I need this, I need a break, right? At least that's what I do. I'm like, oh, I just need a break.
So what we're actually doing with that breath is creating a new habit, because remember what we were saying before was we want to be able to create the space to be okay with ourselves. So that's a habit we'd like to create. In the moments where we're breathing and expressing gratitude for ourselves, we're inherently we're inserting a new reward, we're inserting a new loop into the habit normally was scroll through and then at some point I'm done. But now the habit we're creating is, became aware, breathe breath of gratitude. And now in that moment, I'm just with myself for a moment. And that expands the space that we have inside of us and with ourselves a little bit more each time, so that we become more and more comfortable with that habit of space between what's happening and our reaction to it. Because right now, when you're interacting with social media and technology, this is what it is. It's like, here's this, and then you're just doing. There's no awareness or space. But imagine your breath as the ability to create more and more space in between, more and more space. And then all of a sudden, it's like you can walk around and realize that there's all these things that are calling your attention, asking you to do things, and you get to choose when you engage with them. You get to choose what comes back and how it comes back, because you've cultivated such a space and a confidence with yourself.
That's great. So just that breath, that was a good visual to create the space. And of course, if you are a person of faith, expressing gratitude to your creator, the God you believe in, is super important too, and all part of what we're saying here. I know my daughter was just telling me yesterday that all the kids in her 5-6 building are on their phones at the beginning of school before they're allowed back by the lockers, and that's what the bus ride is, everyone's on their phones. And I know that is decreasing social interaction. So kind of thinking about that and all the stuff we've talked about today, Zach, I always want to leave my parents here with a message of hope. So if you can encourage parents in one way, one thing they can do as they walk away from this video, where we have of course used technology for positive good, hopefully parents are taking positive from this. What's your message of hope for families out there when it comes to kids and technology?
You might consider that the challenges that we're facing with technology are also susceptible to the human impact of intention, just as anything else is. And if that is the case, which I truly believe it is, then if you just simply walk away from this conversation and choose to flip your intention and your lens at which you look at it and say, this is not a problem that I need to fix, and this is not something that's insidious and it's going to ruin my child or their life, but rather every time I see that or anything having to do with an interaction with technology, I recognize it for what it truly is, which is a call to be more aware, which is a call to be more connected and present, and which is asking you to elevate your own humanness. Then you start to really embody the changes you wish to see.
Great. So mindset, a lot of looking for the positive. We do tend to look at technology very negatively. But yeah, why are those kids, why do they want to be on social media? Why do they want to play games? What are they looking for?
Yeah.
Really good questions to ask. Well, thank you, Zach Renner. You can find Zach at awakenedathlete.com and hubu.co. We will link to those wherever we share this video. I really appreciate your perspective as a digital native, someone who's kind of grown up with technology and has, I think, an awareness more than most people in general, more than most people in your generation as well. So we really appreciate your insight, Zach. We appreciate, the way you've taught us to kind of look at things and be more aware. And audience, thank you very much for being here as well. We'll see you again next week for another episode of the Healthy Parenting Connector here at Kids Cook Real Food, where we connect parents who really want to raise healthy kids with the experts who have the information they need. And you're watching this on a screen. Let's have all our intentions on our screens today be for the good, and think about what those intentions are coming at us as well. Thank you so much.